The paradox of the kind-hearted. Machiavelli's guide for good people in a nasty world. Have you ever wondered why the kindest-seeming people in our world often appear to achieve the least success? Why those who faithfully follow the moral principles taught to them since childhood are so frequently exploited by those around them? Niccolo Machiavelli wrote in The Prince, "A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything will necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good." Written 500 years ago, these words still touch the very core of the painful reality many good people face every day. You were probably taught that kindness, honesty, and generosity would be rewarded. That virtue is its own reward. But let me ask you, how many times have you done the right thing only to be exploited in return? How many times have you watched those willing to bend the rules pass you by? This is not merely a modern problem. When Niccolo Machiavelli faithfully served the Florentine Republic for 14 years, what was his reward? Arrest, imprisonment, and torture. It was out of that bitter experience, after the Medici family seized power, that The Prince emerged. This work was not a handbook for tyrants, but a guide for good people to survive in a world that is often not good. You do not need to abandon your kindness. On the contrary, there are ways to protect that kind part of you and make it strong enough to survive in this world, because the world often perceives kindness as weakness. The psychology of selective exploitation research shows that abusive individuals specifically select usable people. They usually target those who are excessively agreeable, avoid confrontation, and try to please everyone. Think about your own experiences. Have you noticed that certain people constantly take advantage of your generosity? Have you ever wondered why the same person doesn't treat others the same way? This is precisely what psychologists call selective exploitation. Individuals with manipulative tendencies do not use these tactics on everyone. They only target those they believe cannot say no. Do you remember that colleague who always dumped work on you at the last minute? Or the friend who borrowed money and never paid it back? These are not coincidences. They have learned they can exploit you. And people are often so self-interested that an opportunist will always find someone available to be used. When Machiavelli observed this, he was not being pessimistic. He was describing a situation he witnessed repeatedly throughout Renaissance politics, and one that continues in offices, friendships, and relationships today. Research confirms this bleak situation. A 2018 study found that individuals scoring high on measures of kindness and cooperation were significantly more likely to be victims of exploitation. Why? They made themselves easy targets by assuming others shared their ethical standards. They avoided conflict even when boundaries were crossed. They continued to give without receiving in return. They exhibited a noticeable discomfort with self-advocacy. Machiavelli said, "It is safer to be feared than loved." However, in saying this, he was not advocating for cruelty. He was merely recognizing a fact. People are less inclined to exploit those who can fight back or cause them harm. Think of it this way. Do manipulative colleagues dump last-minute work on the boss? Do perpetual borrowers try to take money from people who have previously set clear boundaries? Of course not. They selectively target those who exhibit boundless tolerance. The first step to protecting your kindness is recognizing this cycle, because it is often your virtue, not your weakness, that makes you a target. For me, the realization came in the 10th year of my professional life. I was always the one taking on the tasks of late-leaving colleagues and handling the most difficult situations. Yet, when budget cuts came, I was among the first to be laid off, while colleagues who had strategically cultivated relationships with managers retained their positions. I thought my work would speak for itself. But then I realized it wasn't enough. Sometimes you have to talk about your work for people to see its value. That moment of realization is the real moment of awareness. It's the moment when you suddenly see the world through Machiavelli's eyes and understand that performance and virtue alone are insufficient. This moment feels like waking up from a dream, or perhaps entering a nightmare. Have you experienced this moment? The painful realization that the rules you were playing by were not the rules everyone else was using. Machiavelli experienced this moment of awareness in a prison cell, where he was incarcerated for his loyal service. He was tortured for serving a republic that no longer existed. It was from that darkest moment that his deepest insight emerged. Virtue must be protected by strategy. Otherwise, it will be crushed by those without such limitations. The Renaissance world Machiavelli lived in was not so different from ours. Royal courts have been replaced by corporate boardrooms. City squares have been replaced by social media, and office politics have taken the place of real politics. But human dynamics have remained strikingly similar. When Machiavelli stated, "Everyone sees what you appear to be, few experience what you really are," he was revealing a truth even more relevant in our age of carefully curated personal brands and meticulously selected social media personas. Look at how we navigate modern life. We build reputations both online and offline. We form strategic partnerships, careers, and relationships. We still need to distinguish genuine opportunities from exploitative ones. We must protect our interests while striving to do good. This moment of awareness is painful but necessary. This is the moment when we are no longer naive, when we begin to think strategically, not to abandon our kindness, but to protect this goodness that would otherwise be exploited and depleted. The perception paradox. In college, I had a friend who was the best student in the subject. Everyone would come to him with difficult questions, seeking his advice. Yet, when he spoke in class, he always spoke softly, presented his ideas with disclaimers like, "I might be wrong, but," and never interrupted others. But another student in our department would confidently present my friend's ideas as if they were his own, make direct eye contact with the professor, and own his insights. Guess who received praise from the professor and was chosen as a leader in group projects? This is the perception paradox. How you present yourself often matters more than your actual abilities or contributions. It's not fair, but ignoring it doesn't help you navigate reality. Think about your own life. Have you ever watched someone less competent, but more confident, seize the opportunities you deserved? Have you experienced your ideas being ignored only to be noticed when a more assertive person repeated them? Machiavelli understood the perception paradox centuries before. Modern psychology confirmed it. He posited that people often judge by what they see, rather than what they truly experience, judging by the hands rather than the eyes, as he put it. In other words, people evaluate you based on your appearance rather than your actions. Modern research proves him right. Studies show that individuals displaying confident body language are judged as more competent than those with the same qualities, but who act more modestly. A landmark study revealed that the perception of competence frequently outweighs actual competence in hiring and promotion. This creates a particular challenge for kind people who downplay their achievements, limit their expressions so as not to seem boastful, give credit to others, but do not take it themselves, speak less confidently than those who are less ethical. The irony is that this virtuous humility often prevents kind people from gaining the influence they need to truly do good in the world. For what good is your compassion if you can never meaningfully apply it? Consider the transformation of Aziz Sankar. Initially, as a young scientist from a small town, he maintained a quiet and reserved profile. He consciously made presentations to make himself visible in the academic world. He shared his research and scientific opinions effectively on international platforms. Did this strategic self-presentation make him less genuine? Number. It allowed him to win the Nobel Prize, while preserving his kind and meticulous character. The key lesson here is not vain self-praise, but recognizing that managing perception is not inherently manipulative. It is a necessary skill to ensure your virtues are truly effective. To protect your kindness, you must learn how to present it effectively. Be confident when offering help. Appropriately showcase your contributions. Ensure your work is seen. Clearly express your boundaries, both with your words and your body language. Remember, if people perceive you as weak and passive instead of kind, your goodness will be neither valued nor easily exploited. If you are perceived as weak rather than kind, people will treat you accordingly, and your capacity to do good in the world will diminish. The struggle for emotional mastery. When Steve Jobs was fired from Apple in 1985, his initial reaction was immense disappointment and anger. However, instead of reacting immediately, Jobs took time to develop himself.